What if gravity wasn't always down? What if water could climb uphill, rocks could move on their own, and fire burned blue instead of red? All over the world, there are places where the rules break down, where reality glitches just enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about science. But these are real places. So in today's video, we're counting down 15 places that seem to break the law. Mount Roraima, the floating island of stone. Straddling the borders of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana, Mount Roraima towers above the rainforest. It's like something carved from another planet. Its tabletop summit rises almost vertically from the jungle below, with cliffs nearly 1,300 feet tall on all sides. But it's not just the shape that makes this mountain seem like it's defying the rules of nature, it's what happens on top. Mount Roraima isn't a single peak. It's a lost world. It's a geological anomaly so isolated that ecosystems on the summit have evolved independently from the rest of the planet. In many ways, it's a real-life version of the floating mountains in Avatar or the plateau in the Lost World, a monolithic stone block that stands high above everything else, capped with ancient secrets. Clouds regularly roll underneath the summit while the plateau stays dry, making the entire mountain look like it's hovering. It's no wonder why the Pemon people, the indigenous peoples of that region, believed it was the stump of a sacred tree that once held up the heavens. And the strangeness only begins there. The summit is over 2 billion years old. It's part of a formation known as the Guiana Shield, some of the oldest exposed rock on Earth. But despite the ancient origins, the summit ecosystem is shockingly alien. Due to millions of years of isolation, many of the plants and creatures found on top exist nowhere else. Carnivorous plants, black frogs, strange lichens that only thrive in this specific stone, it is a biosphere preserved in time, but cut off from evolution's main path. When it rains, and it does often, water doesn't flow down in streams. It pours off the cliff edges in massive, uninterrupted waterfalls. It's one of the few natural places that it doesn't look like Earth. It looks like a physics-bending illusion in motion. Time feels broken here. There's no sounds of civilization. The winds sound different. The stars seem closer, and it's the kind of place that bends your sense of scale. It's like walking across the surface of an asteroid. Some hikers have described the summit as dreamlike, or dizzying, or like another dimension. And then there's the lights. Several climbers and researchers have reported strange glowing orbs above Roraima, particularly on clear nights. And these lights are often described as slow-moving, hovering just above the plateau, and disappearing suddenly. While no specific explanation has stuck, some believe they're rare atmospheric plasma or reflections from clouds below, but no photographic evidence has ever been clearly confirmed. This is a place that doesn't just look strange, it is strange. Growing life in isolation, defying erosion, holding its flatness while everything else changes. From above it looks like a platform that was built by giants, a clean, precise rectangle that juts out of the jungle. In fog or twilight, the edges appear to float, creating the illusion of levitation. It is one of the most striking topographic anomalies visible from above, a monolith so massive and flat that it could be mistaken for architecture. Number 14. The Magnetic Hill, India, the road that pulls cars uphill. In the desolate beauty of Ladakh in India, a stretch of road has left travelers confused, amused, and bewildered for decades. Just 30 kilometers outside the city of Leh lies a phenomenon known simply as Magnetic Hill, a location where vehicles appear to roll uphill without any power, momentum, or assistance. It's been called a magnetic anomaly, an optical illusion, and even a gravitational mystery. But whatever it is, it seems to challenge one of the most fundamental forces of nature, gravity. Locals have long referred to this place as the Gravity Hill, and travelers are routinely invited to stop their engines at a designated white marker on the road, and if they do, the vehicle begins to roll backward and uphill, or so it seems. Dashboards and camera levels suggest that the car is facing an incline, yet movement appears to defy gravity. Without touching the gas pedal or without pushing the car, people feel themselves sliding upwards. The official explanation: optical illusion. According to surveyors and geologists, the surrounding terrain lacks clear reference points, making the horizon line deceptive. What seems to be an uphill incline is in fact a gentle downhill slope that's camouflaged by the rising terrain. But even with that explanation, there are doubts. Some claim compasses spin or misbehave when placed near Magnetic Hill. Others insist that water poured on the road flows in the wrong direction. Some tour guides even claim the military has quietly studied the hill due to the unusual electromagnetic properties. Something seems to push back against the usual order of cause and effect. So what's really happening here? Let's break it down. Gradient illusion. So gravity is still working as usual. What you think is uphill is really downhill, but because the surrounding landscape tilts even more steeply in the other directions, your perception is warped. There's no magnetic force. Scientific instruments have found no significant magnetic interference in the area, and this phenomenon is likely caused by the lack of a visual horizon. There are psychological expectations. Tourists arrive expecting to see something weird. The power of suggestion often makes people believe they're witnessing an unexplainable event, when in fact their senses are being manipulated. But there's something undeniably eerie about watching your SUV drift uphill in silence. Even if science tells us our senses are wrong, the sensation is so compelling that many drive away half convinced that gravity just decided to take a coffee break. Seen from above, Magnetic Hill looks ordinary. It's just another bend of a ribbon of road carved through Ladak's dusty mountains. But its alignment with nearby valleys reveals how subtle topographic angles can play tricks on your eye. From space, the illusion fades and gravity reasserts itself. But down on the road, the rules just feel rewritten. Number 13. Lake Natron in Tanzania, the blood-red lake that turns animals to stone. In Tanzania, close to the Kenyan border, lies one of the most bizarre landscapes on Earth. Lake Natron is a shallow salt and soda lake with crimson water, steam curling from its shores, and a reputation that feels like something out of myth. It's called a petrifying lake, not just for its eerie stillness, but for its documented ability to turn birds and animals into what appear to be statues of stone. The lake's red color comes from salt-loving microorganisms called halophiles, which thrive in this alkaline water. Their pigments give the lake its vivid, often blood-like hue, and when seen from a distance, or better yet from the air, it looks like a massive wound that's carved into the earth. But the color is only the beginning of this lake's otherworldly attributes. The lake's chemistry is hostile to most life. The water contains high concentrations of sodium carbonate and other minerals, with pH levels as high as 10.5, similar to ammonia. Temperatures here can exceed 60 degrees Celsius or 140 Fahrenheit, and those conditions means the lake can burn the skin and eyes of most animals, and even small splashes on human skin can cause irritation. But it's the statues that make this place truly feel like it breaks reality. Photographer Nick Brandt famously documented birds and small animals that had died near or in the lake and whose bodies were calcified into hardened gray husks. These remains look like they've been turned to stone, perched upright on rocks, wings outstretched, eyes staring forward. They're haunting, disturbing, and seemingly impossible. So what's really going on here? When animals die and fall into the lake's highly alkaline water, their bodies decompose slowly. The sodium carbonate causes a type of mummification, drying out and preserving any soft tissue. Over time, more minerals seep into the tissues, hardening them, and in rare cases, wave action can push these bodies back onto shore, where they're found posed unnaturally as if frozen in mid-motion. There's nothing supernatural at work here, no curse, no magical petrification, just chemistry, working in a way that mimics mythology. Lake Natron is one of Earth's strangest contradictions. It's a place of vibrant life amid deadly hostility, of beauty entwined with decay. It's as though nature decided to experiment with a new set of rules here and forgot to clean up the evidence. From above, Lake Natron is a deep crimson slash in Tanzania's arid north. It's a color not found in most natural lakes. That shimmering red hue stretches for miles, and its edges blur where minerals stain the shoreline. But no satellite images reveal the statues. For that, you have to walk the shore, where physics meets illusion and where life meets stone. Number 12. The Hesdalen Lights in Norway, the valley where the sky behaves strangely. In a remote valley in central Norway, strange lights float, flicker, dart, and hang motionless in the sky, often for minutes, sometimes hours. They're known as the Hestdalen lights, and for more than 80 years they've puzzled everyone from astrophysicists to military radar operators. These luminous orbs appear several times per year, bright enough to be seen with the naked eye, and they seem to defy everything we know about natural light behavior. These sightings began in earnest in the 1930s when locals reported glowing balls of light drifting slowly over the valley. By the 1980s, reports spiked to almost daily. These lights would appear suddenly, hovering silently, sometimes pulsating, sometimes racing across the sky before vanishing. They weren't always white. Some were red, some blue, some changed color mid-flight. Witnesses describe the lights behaving like intelligent objects, reacting to movement, following hikers, even weaving between the trees. On occasion, radar installations and cameras caught them moving at impossible speeds or hovering motionless for long stretches without emitting heat or sound. The scientific community began to take interest. In 1983, researchers launched Project Hestdalen, one of the most sustained attempts to study an unexplained atmospheric phenomenon. They installed observation stations with electromagnetic sensors, radar, infrared cameras, and spectrometers. What they found only deepened the mystery. The lights were real, they appeared on radar, and they had measurable mass. Sometimes they emitted electromagnetic radiation, sometimes they didn't. Their movement couldn't be explained by drones, aircraft, or natural phenomena like ball lightning or even plasma. And stranger, some appeared in areas with no magnetic or tectonic activity, and some seemed to leave behind ionized trails like shooting stars moving sideways. So what causes them? Well, here are some top theories. A piezoelectric effect. Quartz in the valley's bedrock might release charges under tectonic pressure, creating plasma. It could be ionized gas clouds. Some scientists believe that the valley's air chemistry creates stable blobs of plasma under the right conditions. Earth energy anomalies. A fringe theory suggests the valley emits focused energy beams that interact with the upper atmosphere. Unidentified technology. The lights have drawn UFO speculations for decades. Some researchers openly entertain the idea that the valley is being scanned or surveyed by unknown technology. But despite decades of study, no single theory explains the wide variety of behaviors these lights exhibit. They change speed, color, direction, altitude, and brightness, and some show up in infrared but not in visible light. Some only appear when cameras aren't watching. But even with all the technology, the lights refuse to behave. They appear when they want, they vanish without warning, and in doing so, they taunt our understanding of physics itself, defying gravity, thermodynamics, and electromagnetic theory in ways that shouldn't be possible. From above, no glowing dots, no movement, but every now and then, on a cold, clear night, sensors flicker. Lights rise from the earth as if the valley itself breathes in wavelengths we still don't understand. Number 11. The Zone of Silence in Mexico. There's a stretch of desert in northern Mexico, tucked deep inside the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve, that has baffled scientists, soldiers, and locals for decades. It's known as the Zone of Silence. This mysterious patch of land seems to defy logic and, in some cases, the laws of physics themselves. Radios stop working, compasses spin out of control, time and space seem to blur, and even NASA has accidentally stumbled into its strange grip. On the surface, it looks like any other desert, but step inside and you'll find a place where reality itself appears to misbehave. The zone is located near the intersections of the states of Durango, Chihuahua, and Coahuila, forming a triangle that some compare to the Bermuda Triangle, except in the middle of a desert. It first drew widespread attention in the 1970s when a U.S. military test missile went wildly off course and crashed directly into the zone, despite being aimed hundreds of miles away. That accident sparked a wave of investigations, but what they found only deepened the mystery. Scientists have proposed several explanations. One centers on high concentrations of magnetic minerals in the soil, which could interfere with radio waves and navigation. Another theory suggests that meteorite fragments embedded in the land's crust may be affecting electromagnetic activity. The region is, after all, a known hotbed for meteor strikes. But even these ideas don't fully explain the broad range of oddities experienced in the zone. There are reports of electronics failing even when they're not in direct contact with the ground, sometimes mid-air or within vehicles that are completely isolated. Then there's the question of time. Visitors to the zone often speak of losing track of time. Watches malfunction, digital clocks reset, and entire hours seem to vanish. Some believe this could be related to electromagnetic fields or geomagnetic anomalies disrupting small electronics. Others suggest something more unsettling, that the zone might be distorting time at a physical level, creating tiny pockets where time slows or speeds up. It sounds like science fiction, but the frequency of the reports and the consistency of the symptoms suggest something unusual is at play. That comparison to the Bermuda Triangle is also hard to ignore. Like its oceanic counterpart, the Zone of Silence has a history of unexplained navigational failures and alleged disappearances. But unlike the Bermuda Triangle, which is vast and hard to pinpoint, this zone is tightly confined, making its consistency even more perplexing. Why would such an intense concentration of anomalies happen in one small patch of the desert? And why so many of them do they involve electromagnetic interference, time distortion, and unexplained lights? Many who visited say the zone feels off, that there's a quietness that's hard to describe, a kind of pressure in the air, like something's watching or listening. Skeptics point out that many of these phenomena could have natural explanations. The desert is known for its harsh weather, isolation, and its mineral-rich geology. But there's no denying the volume of consistent reports, nor the fact that a U.S. missile veered hundreds of miles off target and crashed squarely into the zone's center. Coincidence? Maybe, but enough to raise eyebrows and questions. As for definitive answers, none of them have stuck. The Zone of Silence remains an open case, a desert wrapped in static and shadows. Number 10. The Eternal Flame Falls in New York. Within the dense, leafy forests of western New York State, a small waterfall tumbles down shale rock and moss-covered cliffs. At first glance, it looks like a quaint hiking destination, quiet, peaceful, picturesque. But then, beneath the cascading water, something impossible flickers. A flame, small but persistent, burns inside a rocky alcove right under the water. It shouldn't be there. Fire and water are natural enemies, and yet at the Eternal Flame Falls, they coexist. This visual paradox doesn't just defy logic, it does challenge the laws of chemistry and physics right in front of your eyes. The flame itself is no illusion. It's fed by a natural seep of gas that escapes from fractures in the Earth's crust. It produces a visible golden-orange flicker that dances just behind the falling sheet of water. Now, what makes it really bizarre is that the flame doesn't go out. Even as the water splashes over it constantly, hundreds of hikers each year stumble upon it, expecting something metaphorical. But the fire's real. You can feel its heat, smell the gas, and even hear the gentle hiss beneath the gurgle of the stream. Natural gas seeps are not unheard of, but their placement beneath a waterfall is. Typically, methane vents are found in dry places, or at least areas not continuously exposed to running water. And yet, here in the Chestnut Ridge Park, nature has created an anomaly where fire and water share the same space. The source of the gas is even more puzzling. Originally, scientists believed the flame was fed by organic shale deep underground, part of the Appalachian Basin, but when researchers from Indiana University investigated the site in 2013, they found something shocking. The rocks beneath the waterfall were not hot enough, nor chemically active enough to produce the level of methane being released. In other words, the flame shouldn't exist at all, not based on our current understanding of how natural gas forms. But beyond the science, the visual leaves a deepest impression in you. Imagine walking through the forest trail, hearing nothing but birds and leaves crunching underfoot. You follow the sound of a waterfall until you see it, a 30-foot cascade tumbling down a stone wall. And behind it, a flickering flame, glowing like a secret. It doesn't seem real. The air smells faintly of sulfur, mist floats around your face, while fire dances where it has no right to be. The coexistence of flame and water has also captured imaginations beyond the scientific community. Photographers from around the world hike into the woods with the specific aim of capturing the flame. Long exposure shots at night reveal the full contrast, fiery orange glowing in the darkness, framed by mist and rushing water. It's the kind of image that looks digitally altered. But it isn't. The scene is as real as it is impossible. So what's exactly happening here? Well, at the most basic level, the flame is being fueled by a steady leak of natural gas, primarily methane, escaping through porous sandstone cracked by ancient faults. These cracks form conduits from deeper, pressurized pockets of gas below, but normally such seeps would vent into the open air and might never be noticed, but here, the unique topography has allowed a small cave-like depression to form behind the waterfall. That depression traps enough gas for a flame to remain lit, even with water rushing in front of it. It's this gap between what we expect and what we see that makes the eternal flame falls feel like it's breaking the rules. It's one thing to know how fire works. It's another to watch it burn calmly and persistently beneath water. Number 9. The boiling river of the Amazon. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, far from the nearest road, hidden beneath a dense green canopy, flows a river that shouldn't exist. It's called Xanay-Timpixca, which roughly translates to boiled within the heat of the sun. But this river isn't just warm, it's hot enough to kill you. For 4 miles, it rolls through the jungle at a near constant temperature of 200 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius, more than hot enough to cook small animals alive. And in many cases, it has. At first glance, it looks like a normal river, muddy, winding, surrounded by vegetation. But the moment you touch it, you know something is deeply wrong. Steam is rising from the surface, the rocks at the bottom are scalding, and birds that land in the water die instantly, their bodies cooking from the inside out. This isn't near a volcano, there are no geothermal vents nearby, and yet the water emerges from underground, already boiling. For decades, the boiling river was written off as a myth, part of local folklore used to scare children. Scientists, of course, were skeptical. After all, the idea of a naturally boiling river that had no volcanic origin didn't really make sense. But in 2011, geoscientist André Rousseau became the first outsider to study it seriously. What he found changed everything. He discovered that the heat wasn't coming from magma or volcanic activity. It was coming from deep geothermal gradients, where water seeps down through fault lines way beneath the surface and is superheated by the Earth's internal energy. That water then surges back up and feeds the river system. But what's strange is how isolated this system is. The region has no recorded volcanic activity, and yet the river reaches temperatures seen in places like Iceland or Yellowstone. Even more bizarre, the temperature remains stable for miles. That shouldn't happen. Rivers are supposed to cool quickly, and yet here, the temperature only begins to drop near the end of the flow, suggesting the underground system beneath the river is acting like a massive, invisible boiler. From a visual standpoint, though, the boiling river is one of the most surreal wonders on Earth. Imagine standing in a jungle, hearing nothing but birds and leaves, and then suddenly you see steam rising ahead like smoke from a wildfire. You push through the undergrowth. You find a river glowing in the sunlight, heat shimmering off the surface, water too hot to touch. Fish can't live in it, frogs die on contact, and only a few microbial organisms survive in isolated pockets near the edges. The locals, however, don't need answers. To them, the river has always been powerful, alive almost. Shamanistic traditions view it as a spiritual boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead, and when you stand near it, breathing the strange mineral-heavy steam, it's not hard to see why. The laws of physics may apply elsewhere, but here, they feel more like suggestions. Only on foot, face to face with the steam and scalding current, can the nature be truly grasped. It is a reminder, not all wonders can be spotted from above. Number 8. The Door to Hell in Turkmenistan. In the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, there's a hole in the earth that never stops burning. It's called the Door to Hell. It looks like something out of a nightmare. It's an open crater 230 feet wide, 70 feet deep, filled with roaring orange flames that have been burning non-stop for over 50 years. This fire pit wasn't made by nature, or at least not entirely. In 1971, Soviet geologists were drilling for natural gas when their rig accidentally collapsed into an underground cavern. Fearing the release of toxic methane, the scientists made a fateful decision: set it on fire to burn off the gas safely. They thought it would take a few days. That was half a century ago, and the fire's never gone out. What remains is a gaping hole in the desert, glowing day and night like the mouth of some ancient beast. The heat here is intense. The air smells like scorched metal and sulfur, and the noise, the deep rumble of burning gas echoing off the rock walls, is otherworldly. From a physics standpoint, though, the Door to Hell is kind of a paradox. Combustion, especially of natural gas, requires a consistent supply of fuel and oxygen. Yet here, the fire has continued for decades without interruption, despite shifting sands, changes in pressure, and years of extreme desert weather. That means this underground pocket of gas must be enormous, or there's an unknown replenishing source that we haven't identified yet. And the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Researchers who have studied the crater have discovered unusual microbial life surviving along the rock walls. Organisms feeding on the heat and chemical-rich environment, much like extremophiles found near deep-sea vents. The presence of these microbes has sparked some interest from astrobiologists who wonder if life can exist here. Could it survive in similar conditions on Mars? The Turkmen government once considered extinguishing the flames. In fact, in 2010, the country's president ordered that the fire be put out due to environmental and safety concerns. But no plan ever worked. Every attempt to smother it failed. The fire wouldn't die. And now some believe the crater will burn for centuries, a man-made volcano fueled by a resource we can't fully measure. The result is a site that blends geology, chemistry, and history, plus sheer spectacle. Standing at the rim, wind blowing across the desert, flames licking the sky, it's hard not to feel like you're staring at something from a different era, or even another world entirely. Unlike most man-made lights, which pulse with electricity or civilization, this glow comes from something more primal: combustion. Energy released not for function, but as an unintended monument to human miscalculation. Moving on to number 7, the reverse waterfalls on the Faroe Islands. In the North Atlantic Ocean, between Iceland and Norway, the Faroe Islands are known for their dramatic cliffs, icy seas, and otherworldly landscapes. But nothing prepares you for what happens when the wind rises. On stormy days, common in this unforgiving stretch of the North Atlantic, dozens of waterfalls that normally plunge off sea-facing cliffs suddenly stop falling. Instead, they rise. Yeah, they rise. Streams of water climb backward into the sky, pushed upwards by ferocious winds, as if gravity itself had been flipped upside down. These reverse waterfalls aren't optical illusions or even camera tricks. They're real, visible, and repeatable. It's the kind of event that seems like it should violate the laws of physics, and in some ways it kinda does. There are many waterfalls across the island, but the most famous reverse cascade happens on the island of Vagar, near the remote village of Gassadalur. From here, the Mulafossur waterfall pours off a 200-foot cliff into the sea, or at least it's supposed to. When the wind gusts are at just the right angle and force, the waterfall begins to hesitate mid-air. The water slows down, it curls back upwards and is whipped into mist, rising instead of falling. It looks like a movie played in reverse, and it's one of the most hauntingly beautiful spectacles nature has ever devised. Photographers, of course, flock here, hoping to catch the perfect shot. But the reverse waterfalls don't happen on a schedule. They require the perfect storm, so to speak. High-speed wind, precise direction, and a steady stream of water from rain or melt. When the conditions align, though, the show is unforgettable, and it's not just one waterfall. On stormy days, multiple cascades across the islands perform this same backward defiance of gravity. Some meteorologists classify this effect as a kind of orographic wind lift, where strong wind is forced upwards due to the topography, specifically the sea cliffs, acting as natural ramps. When that rising air hits a vertical stream of falling water, it acts like a giant hand catching the flow and throwing it skyward. But beyond the science, there's something emotional about this experience. Locals often refer to the waterfalls as alive, temperamental, mysterious, even willful. Tourists who witness this reversal describe it as spiritual, like watching nature momentarily reject its own rules. It is a reminder that even in our modern, calculated world, there are still places where the Earth behaves unpredictably. But even after the wind dies down, the effect leaves a residue, an image that's burned into your memory. Watching it feels like seeing time flow backward. The mind keeps asking, how? And the truth is, we still fully don't know. We understand the wind mechanics, sure, but why only here? Why not in other windy places? Why are some waterfalls affected and others not? Why do some reverse completely while others bend only slightly before evaporating into thin air? All these questions are what elevate the phenomenon from a mere weather event to the realm of physical mystery. Weather satellites do pick up the high-velocity wind patterns that slam into the western face of the islands, And on stormy days, you can see plumes of vapor erupting from the cliffs, signs of mist being thrown upward by forces invisible from the ground. The waterfalls may not fall, but their ghostly signatures still rise into space. Number 6. The Blood Falls of Antarctica. In one of the most desolate, freezing, and alien landscapes on Earth, deep in the heart of Antarctica's McMurdo Dry Valleys, there's a glacier that appears to do the impossible. It bleeds. Streaking out from the front of the Taylor Glacier, blood falls pour across the ice like a wound in the landscape. Its color is unmistakable, deep rusty red, and it drips out of an otherwise pristine ice blue glacier like something straight from a horror film. The first time scientists saw it in 1911, they thought red algae was responsible, but the truth turned out to be even stranger. Blood Falls isn't caused by life. It's caused by a combination of ancient brine, trapped iron, and extreme chemistry that's been isolated from the surface for millions of years. This isn't just melting ice. It is Earth's oldest subglacial ecosystem leaking out from a hidden world beneath the Antarctic crust. About 400 meters beneath Taylor Glacier lies a pocket of ultra-salty, iron-rich water. Trapped without oxygen or sunlight for millennia, this water is so salty that it remains in liquid form even well below freezing temperatures. When it finally finds a path to the surface through tiny cracks in the glacier, it carries with it iron ions, which oxidize upon contact with the air and turn blood red. The result? A haunting red stream. But the weirdness doesn't stop with the color. The fluid gushing from blood falls is home to extremophile microorganisms that have somehow adapted to survive in these conditions. These microbes have no sunlight, no oxygen, and no organic food supply, yet they thrive, feeding off sulfates and iron in total darkness, like creatures from another planet. This tiny pocket of alien life, sealed away under ice, has completely reshaped our ideas about where life can exist and how it survives. It is one of the strongest arguments that life beyond Earth could be lurking in places we haven't even thought of to look. No matter how many times it's photographed, Blood Falls doesn't stop looking unnatural. Ice is supposed to be blue, white, or maybe gray, not red. The visual dissonance between its color and the surroundings makes it feel like a special effect, but it's real, and it hasn't stopped bleeding. As the climate warms, researchers are gaining more access to this hidden under-ice brine network, but the Blood Falls remains one of the few places on Earth where life, geology, and mystery intersect in such a dramatic visual way. From above, under the right conditions, high-resolution imaging satellites can detect its red tint as it leaks into the frozen landscape. The heat signature is negligible, but the hyperspectral imaging reveals the iron content in the water as distinctly alien to its surroundings. It's one of those places you'd never notice from above until you look closely and see something bleeding through the ice. Number 5. The Devil's Kettle in Minnesota. In the forests of northern Minnesota, just off the shore of Lake Superior, there's a waterfall with a mystery that's baffled hikers, scientists, and locals for over a century. It's known as the Devil's Kettle. This bizarre formation lies within the Judge C.R. Magny State Park, and it appears to break the laws of hydrology. Here, the Brule River splits in two. One half continues flowing down the cliff like any other normal waterfall, but the other, it drops into a massive hole in the rock and disappears completely. Where does it go? Well, that's the question. The hole, known as the Devil's Kettle, is about 10 feet across and looks like it was drilled by some machine. For decades, the river's disappearing half has been the subject of folklore, speculation, and dozens of failed experiments. People have tossed ping pong balls, colored dye, and even GPS trackers in there, and none of them ever surfaced downstream. The mystery deepened as every attempt to find the water's reappearance failed. So how could so much water just vanish in a relatively small geological area without creating an obvious outflow? Well, the Brule River is no trickle. It's strong. It's a fast-moving stream with a serious volume of flow. Losing half of that, seemingly into nothing, feels impossible. Theories have been abound over the years. Lava tubes or underground caverns leading to Lake Superior, maybe an underground aquifer system never before discovered, subsurface fractures that spread the water too thinly to detect downstream, Or perhaps the most extreme, that the water travels miles underground before re-emerging far from where anyone has looked. For years, no theory could be proven. Then, in 2016, geologists within the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources offered an explanation. Using a more advanced dye tracing method and flow measurements, they suggested that the water doesn't vanish, it just rejoins the river farther downstream than previously believed. According to their findings, there's likely no vast underground chamber or portal to the underworld, just a hidden subterranean pathway within the rock that channels the water back into the river. But many locals still aren't convinced. They point out that even with modern tools, we still haven't seen the water reappear. And for some, the idea that something so dramatic as such a mundane explanation feels unsatisfying. Folklore, though, continues to flourish. Some say the Devil's Kettle is a spiritual gate, a thinning of the veil between the worlds. Others joke that it's a perfect crime scene. Drop it in the kettle and it's gone forever. Well, the truth might be technical, but the feeling on that misty trail is one of unease and unanswered questions. From above, the forest conceals its mystery well. Satellite images show the winding Brule River splitting at the waterfall, but from above, both channels vanish into the green. No clue, no trail, no obvious point of return. Whatever answers science provides, from above at least, the mystery still holds. Number 4. The Crooked Forest in Poland. In the small town of Gierfino in western Poland is a patch of pine trees that's so bizarre, so deliberately unnatural in appearance, that they seem more like an art installation than a product of biology. Known as the Crooked Forest, this grove contains roughly 400 pine trees, all of which bend at sharp, almost perfect right angles at the base before curving upright again. These aren't random distortions, they're uniform, consistent, and unlike any other forest on Earth. Now, what makes it look like it breaks the laws of physics is how specifically the curvature begins, usually about 10 to 20 centimeters above the ground, and how the bend is identical in direction, shape, and radius across hundreds of trees. After that curve, the trunks grow vertically just like normal pine trees, reaching 30 to 50 feet tall. But that initial swooping bend is unmistakable. It looks like each tree was pushed flat against the ground and then told to grow upwards. At first glance, people think the trees were damaged by a storm, but there are no signs of trauma, no broken bark, no evidence of disease or natural disturbance. The bend appears to have happened when the trees were just saplings, maybe 7 to 10 years old, and then just frozen in place before growing again. The question is, how? One theory suggests human intervention. Some believe the trees were deliberately manipulated in the 1930s or 40s by local woodworkers who wanted to grow naturally curved timber for use in boat building or furniture. But this theory has some flaws. There's no written documentation of the practice, and the technique would have required highly consistent force applied to hundreds of young trees over years. Why would such a labor-intensive practice happen without any record, especially in a relatively obscure forest? Another theory involves snow damage, where heavy snowfall bent the saplings in one direction before they solidified. But that doesn't explain why only this one grove was affected. Surrounding forests of the same age and species are completely normal. It also doesn't account for the consistent directional curve, all the trees bending north before rising, as if responding to a force or influence that's unique to this location. Some others suggest gravitational anomalies, that something in the soil or magnetic field in this small region caused abnormal growth. Other hypotheses include radiation from underground minerals, microseismic activity, or even warped phototropism, where light source interference caused the young trees to grow unnaturally towards a specific direction. But none of these have been proven. At sunrise or under snow, the forest looks dreamlike, curves casting long shadows, spirals accentuated by frost. In autumn, the yellowed needles drape over the arcs like melted gold. In fog, the trees seem to move. And that's part of the effect. The forest appears animated, like it's alive and watching. There's no birds, no insects, just the silent creak of wood and the soft crunch of pine needles under your feet. Despite being small, the Crooked Forest holds its mystery fiercely. No official government or academic study has even fully explained it, and locals pass down theories, tour guides speculate, scientists scratch their heads. But the trees here stand unmoved, curved, and silent, living monuments to a question that no one can yet answer. Number 3. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley, rocks that move on their own. In one of the hottest, driest, and most desolate places on the planet, Massive rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, move across the desert floor on their own. They leave behind them long, winding trails etched in dry mud, snaking across the cracked surface of the remote playa called Racetrack Valley, deep in California's Death Valley National Park. These are the sailing stones, and for nearly a century they represented one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in all of geology. The valley where it happens is eerily flat, a sun-baked basin surrounded by mountains and ringed with silence. Temperatures here often soar past 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 49 degrees Celsius, and the ground is parched into polygon-shaped plates of dry clay. Amid this hostile landscape lies dozens of rocks of varying shapes and sizes, each one seemingly stranded after a slow, silent journey across the ground. The longest tracks stretch over 1,500 feet. Some trails curve, others zigzag, and a few rocks even appear to have turned corners or doubled back. But the most disturbing detail, the rocks move without being touched. Scientists first documented this phenomenon in the early 1900s, and since then, geologists, physicists, and curiosity seekers have all tried to explain it. Early theories assumed that the high winds pushed the rocks, but tests showed that even the strongest desert gusts couldn't even budge the heavier stones. Others said the ground became slick after rare rains, but no one had ever seen the rocks move. Well, that all changed in 2014 when researchers finally caught the phenomenon in the act. A team led by NASA physicist Ralph Lorenz and geologist Richard Norris installed time-lapse cameras, GPS-equipped stones, and weather stations in the valley. One morning, after an exceptionally rare combination of overnight rain followed by a morning freeze, the team watched in awe as thin sheets of ice, just a few millimeters thick, formed under and around the rocks. Then, as the sun rose and the ice began to crack, light winds as gentle as 5 miles an hour pushed the floating ice sheets and the embedded rocks across the slick clay surface. Slowly, gracefully, stones were sailing on invisible ice skates. The mystery was finally solved, but only partially. The exact combination of rain, temperature, freezing wind, and terrain happens maybe a few times a decade. And yet when it does, these huge stones, some weighing over 300 pounds, just glide across the desert in silence. No humans, no animals, just movement, as if the stones were alive. There are smaller versions of this phenomenon around the world, in Bolivia's Salar de Uyuni and parts of Australia, but Racetrack Playa remains the only place on Earth where it happens at this scale, with rocks of this size, over such large distances, and with such perfect trails. Some still insist something else must be going on, that there's more to discover. Others are content with the fragile dance of ice, wind, and sun. Either way, the sailing stones continue to move, and when they do, they remind us of how thin the line is between mystery and science. Number 2. Kawah Ijen Volcano. On the Indonesian island of Java, near to the edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire, there's a volcano unlike any other. It doesn't just erupt with ash or lava, it burns with blue flames. At night, Kawah Ijen becomes something out of science fiction, a mountain that glows electric blue, its slopes streaked with rivers of fire that look like nothing like any of you'd associate with the Earth. These flames, licking out of cracks in the volcanic rock, twist and dance across the crater walls with an unholy glow, giving the illusion that the mountain itself is running on neon. Now, unlike traditional lava, which is red or orange due to molten rock, the blue fire of Kawah Ijen isn't from magma at all. It's caused by pure sulfuric gas escaping from within the Earth. When this gas contacts the oxygen-rich air and ignites, it creates a fire that burns at a temperature of over 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit or 600 degrees Celsius, hot enough to emit an eerie blue light. At night, the effect is mesmerizing and terrifying. The flames seem alive, and Kawah Ijen is the only place on Earth where this happens at this scale. The volcano holds more than just visual strangeness. Inside the crater lies a massive sulfuric acid lake, one of the most acidic natural bodies of water on the planet. Its pH hovers near 0.2, that's comparable to battery acid. The water is bright turquoise, almost glowing in daylight, but don't be fooled, it's lethal. Even the mist rises from the surface can scar lung tissues, and when the wind shifts, it's not uncommon for hikers to just drop to the ground, choking, eyes burning, gasping for breath. And yet, people work here. Dozens of sulfur miners trek into the crater every day before dawn, without gas masks, armed only with metal rods and hand-woven baskets. They extract hardened sulfur from the vents where the gas condenses after burning, carrying out up to 200 pounds on their shoulders. The work here is brutal, the air toxic, and the path is treacherous. But they do it for survival. It's not a quiet experience here. The gas vents hiss like steam engines, the wind howls across the rim, the air is thick and warm. Breathing through a mask helps, but not enough. You're acutely aware you've stepped into a place where human biology really doesn't belong. And it's not just the flames, it's the coexistence of fire and acid. The sulfuric lake glows by day, the fire glows by night. The mountain seems to switch moods without ever really cooling down. It's a place where death and beauty sit side by side, every minute of every day. Number 1. Fly Geyser, Nevada. In the middle of the Nevada desert, far from highways and far from anything resembling a civilization, a kaleidoscopic mountain of steaming rock rises out of the dust, spewing jets of boiling water high into the sky. It's not ancient, it's not natural, and it's not really fully understood. This is Fly Geyser, a technicolor eruption of minerals, heat, and water that seems like it belongs to another planet. Fly Geyser wasn't supposed to exist. In 1916, a group of ranchers drilled a well on the Fly Ranch property, hoping to access groundwater for irrigation. Instead, they hit a pocket of geothermal energy. Boiling water burst from the earth. Unable to cap it completely, they abandoned the well, and the hole continued to spew. Over time, something incredible happened. The minerals in the water, primarily calcium carbonate and silica, began to accumulate, forming a conical mound. As years passed, pressure from the underground built up again, and in 1964, a second eruption happened near the original well. This time, the minerals built not just a cone, but a tower, layered in brilliant hues of red, green, orange, and yellow. Today, Fly Geyser is a 15-foot-tall tower of geothermal fury. It never sleeps. It vents, shoots steaming water 4 to 6 feet into the air day and night. But what makes Fly Geyser seem to break the laws of physics is how natural and artificial forces combined to create something entirely unexpected. It's the result of human failure meeting Earth's raw geothermal pressure in an unintentional birth of something organic and architectural. No two photos of Fly Geyser really ever look the same. In summer, it glows against the desert earth. In winter, steam creates thick fog around the base, giving it a supernatural aura. And at sunset, the geyser glows gold, firelit by the fading sky. And at night, long exposure photography reveals star trails spinning above the glowing pools. Fly Geyser wasn't sculpted, summoned, or saved. It was ignored, and in being ignored, it became magnificent. It's the kind of thing that makes you question whether control is always necessary, whether sometimes beauty emerges best when we simply step back and let the chaos play out. And that's what makes it feel like it defies physics. It's not just the eruption or the color or the heat. It's something this complex and beautiful that it grew on its own, with no design, no plan, and no permission. Fly Geyser doesn't just sit in the desert, it lives there, and it's still growing.